Whatever was in the attic didn't want to escape. It wanted me to answer. I was 20 when I first went up to Blackmere, and if I'm honest, I didn't want the house in the first place. My Aunt June had died in late November, and because I was the only relative without a proper job, proper routine, or any decent excuse, it somehow became my responsibility to go and keep an eye on the place while probate was sorted. My mom made it sound simple. Just a week or two, she said. Air the rooms. Make sure no one's broken in. Put the post in a neat pile. Try not to let the pipes freeze. Like I was being sent to water someone's plants, not sleep alone in a dead woman's house at the very edge of a village I'd only been to twice as a child. Blackmere itself was one of those northern places that felt half forgotten even in daylight. You know the sort. A row of old terraces with soot still baked into the brick, a closed butcher's, a pub with yellowed lace at the windows, one little post office that looked like it should have shut about 15 years ago, but somehow hadn't. It had been raining on and off all afternoon when I got there, that thin winter rain that doesn't seem to fall so much as drift sideways into your face. By 4:30, it was already going dark, and the whole street looked colorless, like someone had drained the life out of it. I remember standing there with my overnight bag and the key in my hand, looking up at number 9 Blackmere Row and thinking, with no good reason at all, I honestly thought the house looked like it knew I was coming. That sounds ridiculous now. I know it does. It looked like any other old terrace from the outside. Narrow front door, peeling black paint, one upstairs window with the curtains half drawn, slate roof dark with rain. But there was something about it that made me hesitate before putting the key in. Not fear exactly. More that awkward little jolt you get when you walk into a room and realize a conversation's just stopped. Like the place had been waiting in silence. Inside, it was colder than I expected. Not just unheated cold. Not the ordinary sort where your fingers sting a bit and you rub your hands together. This was that deep old house cold that seems to come out of the walls and floorboards, as if the place has been shut too long and is offended you've opened it. The air smelled faintly of furniture polish and damp plaster, with something else underneath it. Wet stone, maybe, or old soot. I shut the door behind me, and the sound went further than it should have, traveling up the narrow hall and into the staircase like I disturbed something resting at the top. I called out, partly as a joke, "Hello? Anyone lurking about? This is your warning." My own voice sounded wrong in there, too loud, then oddly swallowed. No answer, obviously, just the small click of the letterbox settling and a soft drip somewhere deeper in the house. The hallway was exactly as I remembered from childhood, only meaner somehow. Same umbrella stand by the door, same dull green wallpaper, same framed print of a fishing boat hanging crooked beside the stairs. Aunt June had always kept the place spotless, but now there was that abandoned feel to it. Not messy, just paused, like she'd only stepped out for 10 minutes and might come back annoyed to find me there. I left my bag by the radiator and went room to room switching lights on. Front sitting room, back kitchen, little downstairs dining room hardly used. Everything looked ordinary, but I couldn't settle. It was in the small details. One mug left upside down on the draining board, a cardigan folded over the back of a chair, a shopping list pinned to a corkboard with things crossed off in her neat square writing. Milk, tea bags, batteries, salt. That last one stuck with me for some reason. There was an envelope on the mantel with my name on it, not posted, just left there where I'd be sure to see it. The paper had yellowed slightly at the edges from the heat of the old gas fire. I opened it expecting practical instructions, bin day, maybe, or where the stopcock was. But there were only 2 lines inside, written in Aunt June's hand. "Elliot, if you have to stay overnight, keep the landing light on. Do not answer it if it calls from upstairs." I stood there for a good few seconds just staring at that second line. I even smiled at first, because what else do you do when a dead relative leaves you a note that sounds like the start of a bad ghost story? I remember actually saying out loud, "Very funny, Auntie June." But even as I said it, the smile died on me. She hadn't been that sort of person. Dry, yes. Sharp as anything, yes. But not theatrical, not whimsical, and not cruel. If she'd written that, she'd meant it. I folded the note and slipped it into my pocket, suddenly aware of the quiet in the house again. Not peaceful quiet, not cozy winter quiet. This was the sort that made you listen too hard, the sort where every tiny sound becomes personal. The boiler creaked somewhere behind a wall, and I flinched. Then I laughed at myself, because I was already letting my imagination run away with me, and I'd been inside less than 10 minutes. But then everything seemed fine, like nothing would happen. I unpacked a few things, made tea, rang my mom to tell her I'd arrived, and even took the Mickey out of the note. She went oddly flat when I mentioned it, asked me to repeat what it said. When I did, there was a pause on the line long enough that I thought she'd cut out. Then she said, too quickly, she was confused near the end, love, "Don't go winding yourself up in that house." I asked if Aunt June had ever said anything strange about the place while she was alive. Another pause. "Just keep the lights on if it makes you feel better," she said, and changed the subject. That bothered me more than the note. By the time I carried my things upstairs, it was full dark outside. The landing was narrow, with 2 bedrooms, a little box room, and the bathroom at the back. The ceiling sloped slightly over the top step, and above the landing there was an attic hatch with a brass ring fixed to it. I noticed it because the wood around the edge was scratched, not badly, just enough to look as though someone had once tried to force it open with something metal. Under the hatch, directly beneath it on the wallpaper, were faint gray marks, almost like smudged fingerprints. I told myself it was old damage and kept moving, but my shoulders had gone tight. The front bedroom was where I was meant to sleep. Same heavy wardrobe, same brass bedstead, same floral curtains Aunt June must have had for 30 years. I put my bag down and opened the curtains a crack. Across the street, every house had its curtains closed except one. An upstairs window opposite had a slit of light showing, and for one horrible second, I thought I saw someone standing there watching me. I blinked, and it was only the shape of a coat hanging on a door behind the glass. Even so, I shut the curtain properly after that. It must have been around 5:30 when I heard the first sound from above. Just one measured thud. Not loud, not dramatic, just enough to make me stop halfway through taking my jumper off. I stood there listening, nothing. Then another, a slow, deliberate step directly over the landing ceiling. I remember the exact thought I had because it was so stupidly hopeful. There's a squirrel up there. I waited for the scramble of claws, the little scratchy scuttle of something trapped in the loft. Instead, there came a third sound. Not claws, not the random shift of old timber. A footstep, heavy enough to suggest weight, slow enough to suggest intent. I didn't go out onto the landing straight away. I wish I had some brave reason for that, but the truth is, I was suddenly frightened in a way I couldn't quite explain. My mouth went dry. The skin at the back of my neck turned cold. Because once I'd heard it properly, once I'd stopped trying to make it into something harmless, I knew exactly what was wrong with it. Whatever was moving above me wasn't moving across the attic. It was moving back and forth, as if there wasn't much room up there, as if something was pacing just above the ceiling, turning at the same 2 points over and over again in the dark. And then from somewhere directly over my head, I heard 3 soft knocks. Not random, not settling pipes. Knocks. I stayed completely still, hardly breathing, staring at the bedroom door like that would help. A second later, from the landing outside, the old bulb overhead flickered once and came back on. And in the silence that followed, with the note in my pocket, feeling suddenly far heavier than paper should, I realized I was no longer thinking about how long I'd have to stay in Blackmere. I was thinking about whether I could get through a single night. I didn't open the bedroom door straight away. That's the part that still bothers me when I think back on it. Not the noise itself, not even the knocks, but how quickly I chose to stay where I was and pretend it wasn't happening. I stood there in that dim little room, staring at the handle, telling myself it was nothing. Old house, loose boards. Maybe someone had left something up there years ago and it had shifted. Maybe I was hearing the echo of something from the street. But the truth was, none of that explained the rhythm of it. I forced a breath out, rubbed my hands together and said quietly, "Don't be stupid." Then I stepped forward and opened the door. The landing looked exactly as it had before. Same narrow strip of carpet, same low ceiling, same weak bulb casting that slightly yellow light that never quite reaches the corners. For a second, I actually felt relief. It was ridiculous, but seeing everything normal again made me feel like I'd imagined the whole thing. Then I noticed something small. The attic hatch, the one with the brass ring, wasn't sitting flush anymore. It wasn't open, not properly, but there was a thin dark line running along one edge, like it had been lifted just slightly and then dropped back into place. And I was certain, absolutely certain, that when I'd come upstairs earlier, it had been closed tight. I stood there staring at it, trying to decide if I was remembering wrong, trying to convince myself I hadn't really paid attention the first time. It would have been easy to accept that, to just shrug it off and go back into the room. But then, right above me, I heard it again, a slow shift of weight. Not a bang, not a creak, just the sound of something adjusting its stance directly over where I was standing. I froze. It's strange how your body reacts in moments like that. I didn't run. I didn't shout. I didn't even step back. I just stood there, looking up at that thin gap in the hatch, feeling my heart start to beat faster and faster, like it was trying to warn me before my brain caught up. "Hello?" I called, before I could stop myself. The word sounded too loud in the narrow space. It seemed to travel up into the ceiling and disappear. For a second, there was nothing. And then, a faint sound. Not footsteps this time, not knocking. Breathing. It was so soft I almost convinced myself I'd imagined it. But it was there. A slow, uneven intake of air, like someone trying to stay quiet but not quite managing it. It came from directly above the hatch. I took a step back. "Right," I muttered, louder than I needed to. "Right, okay, there's something up there." Even saying it out loud felt ridiculous, but it steadied me a bit, gave it shape, made it something practical. Someone had broken in, maybe. Some kid messing about. Someone hiding. That made more sense than anything else. I grabbed my phone from my pocket and flicked the torch on, angling it up at the hatch. The light didn't do much. It just hit the wood and bounced back, making the small gap look darker. "Listen," I said, trying to sound firm, trying to sound like someone who knew what they were doing. "If someone's up there, you need to come down. I'm not messing about. I'll call the police." Nothing. No movement. No reply, but the breathing stopped. That was worse. The silence that followed felt heavier than anything before it. Like whatever had been up there had heard me and was now deciding what to do. I became very aware of how alone I was in that house. No neighbors close enough to hear if I shouted. No one expecting me to check in again that evening. Just me, standing under a thin layer of wood with something on the other side of it that I couldn't see. I told myself to move, to go downstairs, to get out if I had to. But my feet didn't follow the plan. Instead, I found myself stepping closer to the hatch again, lifting the phone a bit higher, trying to peer into that narrow gap. "I can see you, you know," I said. That was a lie. And the moment the words left my mouth, I regretted them. Because something shifted again. Not a step this time. Not pacing. Closer. Right above the center of the hatch. And then, slowly, so slowly I almost missed it, the brass ring moved. Just a fraction. As if something on the other side had hooked a finger through it. I stumbled back so fast I hit the wall behind me. The phone nearly slipped out of my hand. The light shook wildly, jumping across the ceiling. The ring stopped moving, hung there, perfectly still. I waited for it to lift again, for the hatch to swing open, for something to come through. But nothing happened. After a few seconds, the house returned to that same suffocating quiet. The kind that makes you question what you just saw, makes you wonder if you'd imagined the whole thing. I stayed there for what felt like ages, staring at the hatch, waiting for any sign of movement. Eventually, my arms started to ache from holding the phone up, and the light began to dim slightly as the battery dropped. "Right?" I said again, though my voice sounded thinner this time. "That's enough." I backed away from the center of the landing, keeping my eyes on the ceiling, and moved towards the stairs. I didn't turn my back on it. Not fully. Not until I reached the top step. Only then did I glance down, just for a second, to make sure I wasn't about to miss my footing. And in that second, I heard it. Clear as anything. Not from above this time. From the far end of the landing, just outside the bathroom door. A voice. Soft. Familiar. "Elliot?" I stopped dead. My stomach dropped in a way I can't properly explain, because I knew that voice. It wasn't distorted. It wasn't whispering in some unnatural way. It sounded exactly like it should, exactly like my aunt. I didn't turn towards it straight away. I couldn't. I just stood there, staring down the stairs, trying to force my breathing to stay steady. "She's dead," I said under my breath. "She's gone. This is just..." "Elliot," the voice said again, a little clearer this time. "Could you come here a second?" There was something wrong with it. Not obvious, not something you could point to straight away, but if you listened closely, there was a slight delay between the words, like whoever or whatever was speaking had learned the sentence in pieces and was stitching it together. I slowly turned my head. The bathroom door was half open. The light inside was off. The hallway light didn't quite reach into that space, so the inside of the bathroom was just a block of darkness. "Just come here," the voice said. And that was when I remembered the note in my pocket. "Do not answer it if it calls from upstairs." I don't know why, but that line hit harder in that moment than anything else that had happened so far. It cut through the fear just enough to give me something to hold on to. A rule, a boundary. I swallowed, forced myself to look straight at the dark doorway, and said, as steadily as I could manage, "No." There was a pause, a long one, and then the voice changed. Not completely. It was still her, still that same tone, but the softness dropped out of it. What replaced it was flat, empty. "Why not?" I didn't answer. I turned, stepped down onto the stairs, and this time I didn't stop. I went down quickly, one hand trailing the banister, not caring how loud I was being anymore. The sound of my own footsteps felt like the only thing keeping me grounded. Behind me, from the top of the stairs, I heard something move. Not pacing, not breathing, following. Slowly, matching my steps, one for one. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I just kept going until I reached the bottom, crossed the hallway, and pushed into the sitting room, slamming the door behind me harder than I meant to. For a few seconds, I just stood there staring at the door, listening. The footsteps stopped, right at the top of the stairs. And then, faintly, almost like it was leaning over the banister to speak down into the house, "Elliot." I backed away from the door, shaking my head, trying to steady myself. I honestly thought, at that point, that if I just stayed downstairs, kept the lights on, kept everything normal, it would stop. That whatever it was had limits, that it couldn't come further. What I didn't expect was how quickly that idea would fall apart. I didn't sleep. I told myself I would, sat there on the sofa with the television on low, a blanket over my legs, like that would somehow make it all feel normal. But every time my eyes even started to close, I'd hear something. Not loud, not dramatic, just enough to pull me straight back up again. A soft shift from above, a faint tap somewhere in the walls. Once I heard what sounded like the bathroom door upstairs creak open a little wider, even though I'd left it exactly as it was. I kept checking the time on my phone. 10 past 7, 22 past, 7:45. It felt like hours had passed each time, but it hadn't. Not really. Time was dragging, stretching, like the house didn't want the night to move on. I tried ringing my mom again. No signal, not even a single bar. I walked around the room holding my phone up like an idiot, like that might help, but nothing changed. The screen just stayed stubbornly blank, like I wasn't meant to reach anyone. "Fine," I muttered. "Fine. Stay down here. Morning comes. You leave. Simple." I said it like a plan, like I believed it. But there was a part of me, quiet, buried somewhere under the panic, that knew I wasn't in control of how this was going to go. Around 7:30, the television flickered. Not off, just wrong. The sound cut out for a second, and the picture dulled, like someone had turned the brightness down without touching the remote. I frowned, leaned forward, and tapped the side of it. "Don't start," I said. The screen steadied for a moment. The sound came back. Some presenter talking about the weather, completely normal, completely ordinary. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding and leaned back again. And then I saw it. Not properly. Not at first. Just something behind me. In the reflection. I didn't react straight away. I think my brain tried to process it as part of the program. Some trick of light. A shadow from outside. But the more I stared, the more it didn't fit, because it wasn't moving with anything else. Slowly, very slowly, I shifted my eyes without turning my head. Behind the sofa. In the reflection of the darkened screen. There was something standing there. Tall. Too tall for the room, almost. Its head tilted slightly to one side, like it was trying to understand what it was looking at. The shape of it wasn't solid. It was wrong, like smoke but held together, like something that had been burned and was still trying to remember how to be a person. I felt my chest tighten. "Don't move," I whispered to myself. "Don't, just don't." But I couldn't stop looking. The thing didn't rush me, didn't lunge. It just stood there, perfectly still, watching. And I knew, absolutely knew, it was watching me, not just my reflection. The room around me seemed to dim slightly, like the light was being pulled away from the edges and into it. I swallowed hard. "Right," I said, louder this time, forcing something steady into my voice. "Right? If you're there, if there's someone there, this isn't funny, you need to." The thing moved, not forward, closer. But I hadn't seen it take a step. It was just nearer. In the reflection, its shoulders now lined up with the back of the sofa, its head still tilted, still watching. My heart started hammering so hard it felt like it was shaking my ribs. I couldn't do it anymore. I turned, fast. There was nothing there. Just the empty space behind the sofa, the small table with the lamp, the wall, everything exactly where it should be. I stood up so quickly my knee hit the coffee table, and I swore under my breath, more out of shock than pain. My eyes darted around the room, searching for anything out of place. Nothing. "See," I said, though my voice shook. "You're tired. That's all this is. You're—" The television clicked. I froze. Slowly, I turned back towards it. The screen had gone black. Not off, just black. And in it, the reflection was back. Only this time it wasn't behind the sofa. It was directly behind me. Close enough that if it had been real solid, I would have felt it. I didn't breathe. I couldn't. Its head was no longer tilted. It was straight now, facing forward, facing me. And where its face should have been, where eyes should have been, there was nothing but a darker patch of darkness, like a hollow that went further in than it should. Then, very slowly, its arm lifted. Not smoothly, not like a person. It jerked slightly at the elbow, like it wasn't used to the movement. Its hand came up, level with its chest. Long fingers, too long, and it pointed at me. Something in my chest snapped. I staggered back, knocking into the arm of the sofa, my breath coming in sharp, uneven bursts. "No," I said, shaking my head. "No, no, no." The screen flickered, just for a second, and in that second, it was gone. The television came back on, sound blaring suddenly too loud, the presenter's voice cutting through the silence like nothing had happened. I stood there, shaking, staring at the screen, waiting for it to come back. It didn't. Everything looked normal again. Too normal. I backed away slowly, keeping my eyes on the television, like it might change again if I looked away. "I'm leaving," I said out loud to no one. I'm not staying here. Not." The words caught in my throat. Because as I took another step back, my heel brushed against something that hadn't been there before. I glanced down. The envelope. Aunt June's note. It was lying on the floor behind me. I hadn't taken it out of my pocket. I was sure of that. Slowly, my hands trembling, I bent down and picked it up. The paper felt colder than it should have. I unfolded it, my eyes flicking over the same 2 lines I'd already read. But there was something else now. A third line, written in the same handwriting. Only this time it wasn't neat. The letters were pressed harder into the paper, uneven, like they'd been written in a hurry. "It knows your voice now." I stared at it, my vision blurring slightly at the edges. "That's not," I whispered. "That wasn't there before. That—" A sound cut me off. Not from the television, not from upstairs, from right behind me. Close, too close. A breath, warm, right against the back of my neck. "Elliot?" I didn't turn this time. I couldn't. My whole body locked up, every muscle tightening at once, like if I moved even slightly, something worse would happen. The voice was clearer now, stronger, still hers, still my aunt. But there was no delay anymore, no stitching. It sounded right. And somehow that made it worse. "I'm right here," it said softly. I squeezed my eyes shut, my hands clenched into fists at my sides. "You're not," I said, forcing the words out through my teeth. "You're not her. You're not." There was a pause, and then very quietly, "I know." Something brushed against my shoulder, light, almost gentle. And that was the moment something inside me gave way. Because up until then, I'd still had that thin line of denial, that fragile belief that there was some explanation, some way to make sense of it all. But standing there, feeling something touch me that wasn't there, hearing it speak like it understood what it was doing, I realized I wasn't dealing with something I could explain. I wasn't even dealing with something that just wanted to scare me. It was learning, adapting, getting closer, and I had no idea how far it could go. Slowly, I opened my eyes, and without turning around, I started to cry. I don't remember deciding to move. One second, I was standing there, shaking, trying not to turn around, and the next, I was already halfway across the room, knocking into the side table and nearly slipping on the rug. It wasn't bravery. It wasn't a plan. It was just that instinct, the one that kicks in when something deep in your body tells you that if you stay where you are for even one more second, something irreversible is going to happen. I reached the front door and fumbled with the lock, my hands clumsy, fingers not doing what I was telling them to. For a moment, I thought it was stuck, that I was going to be trapped there with whatever had been standing behind me now free to come as close as it liked. Come on, I muttered. The latch clicked. I yanked the door open and stepped out into the cold air, so fast I almost lost my balance on the wet stone step. The difference hit me immediately. Outside felt normal. Cold, dark, yes. The street still empty and quiet, but it was a different kind of quiet. Not the suffocating, listening silence from inside the house. This was just night. Just wind moving somewhere far off, the faint hum of a car passing on a road I couldn't see. The kind of quiet you can exist in without feeling like you're being watched. I took a few steps forward, away from the house, breathing hard, trying to steady myself. My hands were still shaking. My chest hurt from how fast my heart was going. "You're fine," I said out loud. "You're fine. It's just stress. That's all it is. You've had a long day. You're..." "Elliot." I froze. The voice didn't come from inside the house. It came from behind me, from the street. I turned slowly. There was no one there. The row of houses stretched out in both directions, windows dark, doors closed, no movement, no shadows shifting, nothing. But I'd heard it, clear as anything. "Elliot." Closer this time, and wrong again. Because now it wasn't just her voice. It was layered, like two versions speaking at once, slightly out of sync. One soft and familiar, the other quieter, almost underneath it, dragging just a fraction behind the words. I stepped back instinctively, my heel catching the edge of the pavement. "No," I said, shaking my head. "No, you don't. You don't get to come out here. You don't." Something moved in the corner of my eye. Across the street. That upstairs window I'd noticed earlier, the one with the slit of light, flickered slightly like someone had just passed in front of it. I stared at it. Waiting. Nothing. Just the same thin line of light. I told myself it was someone living there, someone moving about. Normal. Ordinary. But then the curtain twitched. Not much. Just a small shift to one side. And for a split second, I saw a face. Not clearly. Not enough to describe properly. But enough to know it wasn't right. Too still. Too blank. And then it was gone. The curtain fell back into place. The light behind it dimmed. I stood there, my breath fogging in the cold air, trying to decide what to do. Go back inside? Absolutely not. Stay out here? For how long? And why did it suddenly feel like the street wasn't as safe as I thought a moment ago? I took another step away from number 9. Then another. And that's when I noticed something that made my stomach drop. Every house along the row, every single one, had its curtains closed, except mine. The front window of Aunt June's house was wide open. I hadn't opened it. I hadn't even touched it. But there it was, the curtains drawn back just enough to see into the sitting room. The television was still on, and from where I was standing, I could see the screen. Black, not off, just black. I didn't want to look. I knew I shouldn't, but I did. And there it was again. Standing in the reflection, only this time it wasn't behind me. It was standing where I had been, right in the middle of the room, facing the window, facing me. Even from across the street, I could see the shape of it, tall, narrow, wrong in ways I couldn't quite put into words. The way it held itself, the way its arms hung just slightly too long at its sides. It didn't move, it just stood there, watching. And then, slowly, it raised its hand and mimicked the exact motion I'd made earlier. A small, hesitant wave. My breath caught. "That's not," I whispered. "That's not possible. I'm out here. The thing tilted its head. And even at that distance, even through glass and reflection, I could feel it. Recognition. Not just awareness. Understanding. It wasn't just copying me. It knew me. I took another step back, my heart racing again, panic creeping back and sharper than before. "No," I said, louder now. "No, you stay in there. You don't follow me. You don't." Elliot? The voice came from right beside me. I spun around so fast I nearly fell. There was no one there, but the air felt different, closer, like something had just moved through it. I staggered backwards, my eyes darting between the house and the empty street, trying to keep track of where it was, where it might be. I'm not going back in, I said, my voice shaking. Do you hear me? I'm not. Why not? The question came from behind me again, closer, always just out of sight. I turned again and again, trying to catch it, but there was nothing, no figure, no shadow, just that voice moving around me, never quite in the same place twice. You said you'd stay, it added. That stopped me. What? You said you'd stay. I didn't, I snapped. I never. But even as I said it, something twisted in my chest, because I had, not out loud, but earlier sitting in that room, trying to convince myself everything would be fine. Stay the night. Morning comes, you leave. Simple. I'd said it. Not to anyone, but I thought it. And somehow, it had heard. That's not how it works, I said, backing further down the street now, putting more distance between me and the house. You don't get to. Listen to that. You don't get to. You opened the door. The voice was quieter now, almost thoughtful. You answered. I didn't answer you. I said, my throat tight. I said no. I said, you spoke. I stopped. The street felt smaller somehow, narrower, like the space around me was tightening. You let me hear you. A cold wave ran through me, starting at the back of my neck and spreading down my spine. The note, the third line. It knows your voice now. I didn't invite you, I said, more to myself than anything else. I didn't. This isn't. You don't have to. The words came from directly behind me, right at my ear. I felt it again, that warmth, that breath. And this time I couldn't stop myself. I turned. Nothing at all. Just the empty street, stretching out into the dark. But something had changed. I could feel it. It wasn't just in the house anymore. That safe line I'd imagined, the one that kept whatever it was inside those walls, had never existed. I stood there for a long moment, shaking, trying to piece it together, trying to understand what had just happened. And slowly something awful began to settle in my mind. This wasn't about the house. Not entirely. The house had just been where it was, where it had waited. But the moment I'd spoken, the moment I'd acknowledged it, it had shifted, attached, not to the place, to me. I looked back at number 9. The window was dark now, the reflection gone. It looked ordinary again, empty, like nothing had ever happened inside. But I didn't believe that anymore, because standing there in the cold with that voice still echoing faintly in my ears, I realized something that made everything worse. Leaving the house hadn't ended it. It had just changed where it was standing. And for the first time since I'd arrived in Blackmere, I understood something properly. I wasn't just trying to get through the night anymore. I was trying to figure out how to get away from something that already knew exactly how to find me. I don't remember walking back to the house. That's the part that never sits right when I think about it later. I remember standing in the street, trying to convince myself I should keep walking. Just go to the end of the row, find somewhere with lights on, knock on a door, call someone, anyone. But the next clear memory I have is my hand on the front door again, the key already in the lock. Like I'd skipped something. Like there was a piece of time missing between deciding not to go back and being there anyway. The door opened easily this time. Too easily. The hallway looked the same. Nothing out of place. The umbrella stand, the crooked picture, the same dull wallpaper. Even the air felt slightly warmer than before, as if the house had settled while I'd been outside. I stood on the threshold for a moment, staring in. You don't have to do this, I muttered to myself. No answer, no voice, no movement. It almost felt stupid now, like I'd overreacted, like the cold air and the dark had got to me, and everything I thought I'd seen was just... Then the door behind me closed. Not slammed, not forced. Just a soft, deliberate click. I didn't touch it. I turned slowly, my hand hovering near the handle, but I didn't open it again. Something about the quiet inside the house had changed. It wasn't empty anymore. It felt occupied. Not in a physical sense, like someone was standing in the next room, but like the space itself was aware of me being back. Right, I said, louder than I felt. Enough of this. I stepped further inside, forcing myself to move, to act like I had some control over what was happening. I flicked the hallway light on, even though it was already on. I walked into the sitting room, checked the television. Normal. Just some late-night program playing quietly. No black screen, no reflection. Everything looked fine. Too fine. That was the problem. Because if everything was normal, then where had it gone? I swallowed, trying to steady my thoughts. "You're not staying down here all night," I said. "You need to figure out what's actually going on." The words sounded sensible, practical. But even as I said them, my eyes drifted towards the stairs, towards the landing, towards the hatch. I didn't want to go up there, not even slightly. But there was something worse than fear building in my chest now. Something heavier. The kind of dread that comes when you realize ignoring something isn't going to make it stop. It had been above me. It had been inside the house. And somehow, it had already been outside too. If I didn't understand what it was, what it wanted, I wasn't going to last long in that place. "Fine," I said quietly. "Fine, quick look, that's it." I grabbed a torch from the kitchen drawer, one of those cheap plastic ones that flicker if you tap them wrong, and made my way back into the hallway. The stairs creaked under my weight, louder than before, like they were announcing each step. I found myself counting them without meaning to. 1, 2, 3, as if that would keep everything grounded, keep everything normal. At the top, I stopped. The landing light was still on. The attic hatch looked exactly as it had before, closed, flush with the ceiling, no gap, no sign it had ever been disturbed. I stared at it, my grip tightening around the torch. "That's not," I whispered. "That's not how it was." I knew what I'd seen earlier. I knew that gap had been there. The ring had moved. Something had been on the other side. But now, nothing. I stepped forward slowly, my eyes fixed on the hatch. "Right," I muttered. "You're just remembering it wrong. That's all." I reached up, hesitated for a second, then grabbed the brass ring. It was cold. Colder than anything else in the house. I pulled. The hatch opened with a dull, dragging sound, like the wood didn't want to move. A thin line of darkness appeared, then widened as I pushed it up fully. A stale smell drifted down, not just dust, something older, something burnt. I raised the torch and shone it up into the opening. At first, all I saw were the usual things: beams, insulation, the rough shape of a small attic space. And then I realized something wasn't right. It was too shallow. The roofline sloped much lower than it should have, cutting the space off after barely a meter. There was no room to stand, barely room to crawl. And yet, I'd heard footsteps, pacing, back and forth. I frowned, angling the torch further in. "Hello?" I called, my voice quieter now. The light caught something at the far end. Not wood, not insulation. Brick. A solid wall, closing off the space entirely. I blinked. That can't be right. I leaned closer, gripping the edge of the hatch, stretching up onto my toes to see further inside. The beam creaked slightly under my weight, and for a second I hesitated, but curiosity pushed me on. The brick wall didn't look new. It was old, darkened, uneven, like it'd been put there years ago and left untouched. And then I noticed something else. A gap. Not in the wall itself, but just to the side of it. A narrow opening, half hidden behind one of the beams. It was small, too small to notice unless you were looking directly for it, but it was there. A space beyond the brick. My stomach tightened. "There's more," I whispered. That didn't make sense. Not with the size of the house, not with how the roof was shaped. There shouldn't have been anything beyond that wall. But there was. I could feel it. I shifted my weight, pulling myself up slightly, enough to get my head and shoulders level with the opening. The beam dug into my chest, and the wood groaned under me, but I held steady, pushing the torch through the gap. The light flickered once, then steadied, and what it revealed made my breath catch. It wasn't another attic. It was a passage, narrow, tight, barely wide enough for a person to squeeze through. The walls were brick on one side, but on the other, something else. Dark wooden panels, blackened as if they'd been scorched long ago. The floor looked uneven, covered in a thin layer of dust and something darker beneath it. And hanging from one of the beams, just inside the passage, a line of metal spoons, bent, twisted, each one nailed through the handle into the wood, forming a rough circle. I stared at them, trying to make sense of it. Why would anyone? My voice trailed off. Because the spoons weren't the worst part, it was the wall behind them. A section of brick that looked wrong, not broken, not damaged, just darker than the rest, wet looking, as if something on the other side was pressing against it. I leaned in closer, my face now level with the opening, the torchlight trembling slightly in my hand. The surface didn't shine like water. It absorbed the light, like it was pulling it in. And then something shifted, not in front of me, not in the room, but behind that wall. A slow, deliberate movement, as if something had just leaned closer from the other side. I jerked back instinctively, my head hitting the edge of the hatch with a dull crack. "Jesus!" I hissed, scrambling down onto the landing, my heart racing again. I stared up at the opening, breathing hard, waiting for something to follow. Nothing did. The hatch remained open, the dark space above it silent, but I could still feel it, that presence. Closer now, not pacing anymore, not wandering, focused on me. I staggered back a step, shaking my head. "No," I said, my voice unsteady. "No, that's not real. That's just..." A sound cut me off. Soft, faint, from above. Not breathing, not footsteps, muffled, as if it was coming from behind that wall. Elliot. I felt the blood drain from my face. It wasn't coming from the landing. It wasn't coming from the house. It was coming from inside that hidden space, from somewhere I shouldn't have been able to hear it all. "Come closer." The words dragged slightly at the end, like they were being pulled through something thick. I backed away, my legs unsteady. "No," I whispered. "No, I'm not. I'm not doing that. I'm not." "You already did." The torch flickered again. For a split second, the light dimmed, and in that brief, shifting darkness, I saw something move inside the passage. Not clearly, just a shape, tall, too tall for the space, folding itself wrong, like it didn't quite fit where it was. The light snapped back, nothing there. The passage empty again. But I didn't need to see it anymore, because now I understood something that made everything worse. The thing I'd seen in the reflection, the thing that had been behind me, the thing that had followed me outside, it hadn't come from the house, not really. It had come from there, from that hidden space above the ceiling, from behind that wall. And now it knew I'd found it. I slammed the hatch shut harder than I meant to. The sound echoed down the landing and into the rooms, louder than anything else that had happened so far. And for a second, I thought I'd made a mistake. Thought I'd provoked something. I stood there, staring up at the ceiling, waiting for the wood to splinter, for something to force its way through. But nothing happened. No footsteps, no knocking, just silence, the kind that makes you feel like you've been heard. I backed away slowly, my eyes still fixed on the hatch, then turned and went straight into the front bedroom, shutting the door behind me and leaning against it, like that thin piece of wood was somehow enough to keep whatever was up there out. "Right," I whispered, pressing my hands to my face. "Right. You've seen it now. You know it's there. That's fine. That's manageable." It wasn't. Nothing about it was manageable. But saying it out loud gave me something to cling to. I dragged the chair from the corner and wedged it under the handle, even though the door opened inward and it wouldn't have done much anyway. Then I crossed to the bed and sat down, the mattress dipping under my weight with a soft, familiar creak that almost made me feel worse. Everything in that room was so ordinary, so normal. And yet, up there, just above the ceiling, something was waiting. I pulled my phone out again, checked the signal. Still nothing. "Brilliant," I muttered. "Absolutely brilliant." I thought about going back downstairs, grabbing my things, leaving properly this time. But the idea of stepping onto that landing again, of walking under that hatch, made my chest tighten in a way I couldn't ignore. So I stayed. Sat there on the edge of the bed, listening. Minutes passed, maybe longer. It was hard to tell. The house had that strange stillness again, like it was holding its breath along with me. I kept expecting to hear something, movement above, a creak, a voice, but there was nothing. And slowly, stupidly, I started to calm down. "See?" I said quietly. It's not doing anything. You're fine. You're just..." A sound cut me off. Not from above, from the hallway. A soft click, like a door handle turning. I went completely still. "No," I whispered. The chair under my door rattled slightly, not hard, just a gentle nudge, like someone testing me. I stared at it, my breath caught halfway in my throat. Then, a voice. "Elliot?" My chest tightened so fast it felt like something had grabbed it from the inside. It couldn't. "Elliot, are you in there?" My mom. It was my mom's voice. Clear, familiar, exactly as it should be. The slight edge of worry she always had when she couldn't get hold of me, the way she softened my name at the end of a sentence. For a split second, I almost moved, almost stood up. almost went to the door. "Mom?" I said before I could stop myself. The words slipped out too easily, too naturally. And the moment it did, I felt something shift. Not outside, inside me, like I'd just done something important without meaning to. The handle moved again. "Thank God," she said, relief flooding her voice. "I've been trying to ring you. Your phone's not going through. Can you open the door, love?" I stood up slowly, my legs unsteady. "This isn't," I started, shaking my head. You're not here. You can't be." "Elliot, please," she said a little sharper now. "Stop messing about. It's freezing out here. Open the door." I stared at the handle. It turned slightly, stopped, turned again, not forcing it, just trying. "Why would she be here?" I whispered to myself. She doesn't know how to get here. Elliot." The tone changed, subtle but wrong, less warmth, less her. "Open the door." I took a step back. No, silence. For a second, I thought that was it. That I'd done the right thing. That whatever it was would just stop. Then the voice came again, quieter, closer, right against the door. "You always answer me." I felt my stomach drop, because that wasn't something my mom would say. Not like that, not in that tone. I said no, I whispered, my voice shaking. This isn't real. You're not real." A soft laugh, not hers, not fully. Something underneath it, something that didn't quite understand how laughter should sound. "But you know me." I backed away further until my legs hit the bed. "No," I said louder now. "No, you're not. You're not her. You're not." "You said my name." The words were slower now, careful, measured, as if it was choosing each one. "You let me hear you." My hands clenched at my sides. "The note, the third line, it knows your voice now." "I didn't," I started, then stopped. "Because I had. First my aunt, now my mom. Each time I'd answered, each time I'd responded, each time I'd given it something." "I'm not talking to you anymore," I said firmly, even though my voice trembled. "Do you hear me? I'm not." "You already are." The handle turned sharply. The chair scraped against the floor, holding for now, but not by much. I flinched back. "Stop," I snapped. "Just stop." The movement froze, dead still. And then a different voice, one I hadn't heard in years. "Elle?" My breath caught. I felt something cold settle in my chest. "No," I whispered. No. "Elle, it's me." My older brother. He died when I was 15. Car accident, gone before I ever got to say goodbye. The voice was perfect. Not just the sound of it, the way he spoke, the slight laugh in the middle of words, the way he shortened my name. It was him. It couldn't be him, but it sounded exactly right. "You've got it wrong," he said, softer now. "It's not what you think. I just need you to..." "Stop," I shouted, my voice cracking. "Just stop, all right? That's not funny. That's not..." "I miss you." The words hit harder than anything else had, not because of how they sounded, but because of how easily they broke through everything I'd been trying to hold together. For a second, just 1 second, I wanted to believe it. I took a step forward. The chair creaked under the pressure on the door. The handle turned again, slowly, inviting. "You don't have to be scared," the voice said. "Just open the door. Let me in." My hand lifted slightly. I didn't even realize I was doing it. Didn't realize I was reaching for the chair, for the handle, until I noticed something. A detail. Small but wrong. The voice, it wasn't pausing for breath. Not once. Not even slightly. It was speaking in one long, continuous flow, like it didn't need to stop. Like it didn't need air. I froze, my hand hovering inches from the chair. "That's not," I whispered. "That's not how you..." The voice cut off, instantly, mid-sentence. Silence dropped into the room like something heavy. Then, very quietly, "You're learning." I stumbled back, my heart slamming against my ribs. The handle stopped moving, the pressure against the door faded. And then, footsteps. Not in the hallway, not on the stairs, above me, directly above the bedroom ceiling. Slow, measured, pacing again, back and forth, back and forth. I looked up, my breath shaking. It had gone back into that space, back behind the wall. But something had changed, because now it wasn't just calling me anymore. It was testing me. Learning what worked, learning what didn't. And the worst part, the part I couldn't shake no matter how hard I tried, was that for a moment, just a moment, it had almost succeeded. I didn't last the rest of the night in that room. Not properly. I stayed there until the pacing above me slowed, then stopped, then started again somewhere further along, like it was moving away from directly overhead. That gave me just enough space to think, not clearly, not calmly, but enough to realize I couldn't sit there waiting for it to try something new. By the time the sky outside had gone from black to that dull gray that passes for morning in places like Blackmere, I was already downstairs with my coat on. I didn't pack anything, didn't tidy, didn't even switch the television off. I just opened the front door and stepped out, not looking back this time, not even once. The air outside felt sharper in the morning, colder but cleaner, like whatever had been inside that house couldn't quite follow into daylight. Or maybe it could, and I just couldn't see it properly anymore. I didn't know which was worse. The street was still quiet, but not empty in the same way. A car was parked a few doors down with frost on the windscreen. Somewhere, faintly, I could hear a radio playing through a wall. Normal sounds, ordinary life. It helped a bit. I walked without thinking at first. Just needed distance. Needed to get far enough away that the house didn't feel like it was right behind me anymore. But after a few minutes, something started to settle in my mind. Because leaving didn't fix anything. It hadn't stopped it from speaking. It hadn't stopped it from following me outside. And it definitely hadn't stopped it from knowing things it shouldn't. So if I wasn't going to understand what was happening, if I didn't figure out where it came from, I wasn't just going to be running. I'd be running blind. I stopped walking and looked back down the road. Number 9 wasn't visible from where I stood, but I could still picture it. The window, the landing, that hatch, the passage, the wall, something pressed behind it. You already did. I shook my head hard, trying to push the memory out. Right, I muttered. Fine. If it started there, there's got to be something about it. History, records, something. It felt like the only thing I could do that wasn't just panicking. The village center wasn't much, if you could even call it that. But I remembered there being a small post office from when I'd visited as a kid. If anyone knew anything about the houses on that row, it would be someone there. It didn't take long to find it. The building looked older than the rest, tucked between 2 terraces, with a faded red sign hanging above the door and a bell that gave a dull, tired jingle when I pushed it open. Inside, it was warm, properly warm, the kind of heat that sinks into your bones after you've been out in the cold too long. There were shelves along the walls with bits and pieces, newspapers, tins, postcards that probably hadn't sold in years. And behind the counter, sorting through a stack of envelopes, was a woman in her late 60s, maybe older, with gray hair tied back and glasses perched low on her nose. She looked up when I came in. "Morning," she said, her voice steady but curious. "You're not from around here." It wasn't a question. "Yeah," I said, stepping forward. "No, I've just come to stay at number 9, Blackmere Row." The moment I said it, something in her expression changed. Not dramatically. Not enough that you'd notice if you weren't looking for it, but it was there. A slight tightening around the eyes. A pause before she spoke again. "Have you now?" she said, setting the envelopes down. "June's place." "You knew her?" "Everyone knew June," she replied. "Lived there longer than most of us have been breathing." There was something in the way she said it that made me hesitate. I found a note she left me," I said carefully, "about keeping the landing light on, not answering anything from upstairs." I watched her face as I said it. This time the reaction was clearer. She didn't look surprised. She didn't laugh. She didn't tell me it was nonsense. She just sighed, slowly, like she'd been expecting that. "She shouldn't have left you there on your own," she said quietly. A cold feeling settled in my stomach. "What does that mean?" The woman studied me for a moment, then glanced towards the door, as if checking whether anyone else might walk in. "What happened?" she asked instead. I hesitated. Part of me didn't want to say it out loud. Didn't want to sound like I'd lost it after one night in a strange house. But something about her tone, about the way she'd reacted, made it feel like she already knew more than she was letting on. So I told her, not everything, not the voices, not my brother, but enough, the footsteps, the hatch, the passage, the wall. And when I mentioned the spoons, the bent metal nailed into the beam, her hand tightened slightly on the counter. "Right," she said, almost to herself. "So it's still there then?" My chest tightened. "Still," I repeated. "What do you mean still?" She didn't answer straight away. Instead, she turned, walked over to a small cupboard behind the counter and pulled out a folder, old, worn at the edges, the kind of thing that had been opened and closed too many times. She brought it back, set it down between us, and opened it. Inside were photocopies, newspaper clippings, old photographs, most of them black and white, faded. Before those houses were built, she said, tapping one of the photographs, there was another place on that land, bigger, set back from the road a bit, went by the name of Mere House. I leaned in slightly, looking at the image. A large structure, Victorian, maybe older, tall windows, dark roof. Something about it felt wrong. Not obviously, not in a way you could point to, but it had that same feeling I'd had standing outside number 9, like it didn't want you there. What happened to it? I asked. Fire, she said simply. 1891, took most of it in one night. I glanced at her. Most of it? Her lips pressed together. 5 dead, she continued. Mother, 3 children, a girl who worked for them. Only one who made it out was the father. Right, I said slowly. So, just a tragedy then. She didn't respond, just slid another paper towards me, a report. Old, the ink slightly smudged in places. I scanned it quickly, my eyes catching on certain lines. Unusual conditions observed within upper rooms. Witnesses report sounds originating after structural collapse. Survivors' statements inconsistent. My brow furrowed. What's this? I asked. Coroner's notes, she said. Or what's left of them. I looked up. Inconsistent how? She hesitated, then said very quietly, he said the children locked themselves upstairs. I felt a small, sharp twist in my chest. What? He claimed they ran up there during the fire, she went on. Locked themselves in, said they were trying to hide. That doesn't, I started. That doesn't make any sense. No, she agreed. It doesn't. She tapped another line on the page. I followed her finger. Subject insists presence within walls prior to ignition. Children hiding from it. I swallowed. That's not the strangest part, she said. My eyes flicked back up to hers. What is then? She held my gaze for a second, then turned another page. A handwritten account. Messier than the others. Less official. Neighbors, she said. People who were there that night, after the fire had burned itself out. My chest tightened again. What about them? Her voice dropped slightly. They said they could still hear knocking. The words seemed to hang in the air between us. Knocking? I repeated. She nodded. From inside the house, she said, after it had already collapsed. A cold wave ran through me. That's not possible, I said automatically. No, she agreed again. It isn't. Silence settled between us. Heavy. Uncomfortable. I looked back down at the photograph, at the house that had once stood where number 9 now stood, and for the first time, I felt like I was starting to understand something. Not everything, not even close, but enough to make it worse. The passage, I said slowly. In the attic. That shouldn't be there, should it? No, she said. And the wall. That shouldn't be there either. I let out a shaky breath. So what is it then? She didn't answer straight away. Instead, she closed the folder gently and rested her hand on top of it. Then she looked at me. Properly looked. Like she was deciding whether or not to say something she couldn't take back. When they rebuilt the row, she said finally, they didn't clear everything properly. Too expensive, too much work. They just built over what was left. My stomach dropped. I mean, she said, her voice steady but quiet. Whatever was in that house didn't all burn away with it. The shop felt colder suddenly. Despite the heat, despite the light, I swallowed hard. And June, I asked, did she know? The woman's expression softened slightly. She managed it, she said, for years, kept to herself, followed certain habits. Like what? Her eyes flicked briefly towards the door again, then back to me. Never answering voices, she said. Never leaving that hatch open, never giving it anything to work with. A chill ran down my spine. Then why leave me there? I asked. Why not just warn me properly? Tell me what it is. She hesitated, then shook her head slightly. Because, she said, it doesn't need much. I frowned. What do you mean? Her gaze didn't waver. Just a word, she said. My throat tightened. A name, she added. And in that moment, everything I'd experienced the night before, the voices, the way it had changed, the way it had learned, it all shifted in my mind, rearranged itself into something worse. Because it hadn't just been calling me, it had been waiting for me to answer, to speak, to give it something. And now it had. I took a slow step back from the counter, my hands cold, my thoughts racing. That's not, I whispered. That's not how. Did you speak to it? She asked suddenly. I froze. Did I? My aunt, my mom, my brother. I'd answered. Every time. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. She saw it in my face. And the look she gave me then, it wasn't shock, it wasn't surprise. It was something worse. Recognition. "Oh, lad," she said quietly. And for the first time since I'd walked into that house, I realized I might not have just found something. I might have already let it out. I didn't go straight back to the house. I told myself I wouldn't. I stood outside the post office for a long time after leaving, the cold settling into my hands again, the folder of everything she'd shown me still playing over and over in my head. Fire. Knocking. Something in the walls. Something that learned. Something that didn't need much. Just a word. Just a name. And I'd given it both. "Brilliant," I muttered, pacing a few steps up and down the pavement. "Absolutely brilliant. Elliot, in for one night and you've what? Released something you don't even understand?" I pulled my phone out again. Still no signal. I stared at it for a second, then shoved it back into my pocket with a frustrated breath. Fine. Not relying on that then. There was only one other option that made any sense, not because it was smart, but because I couldn't do this on my own anymore. I needed someone else to see it, to tell me I wasn't losing my mind. Or, worse, to confirm that I wasn't. I walked further into the village, past the pub, past the closed butchers, until I found a spot where I vaguely remembered getting signal as a kid. I held my phone up, turned in a slow circle. One bar. "Come on," I whispered. "Come on, don't drop now." I scrolled quickly, found the contact I needed, and hit call before it could vanish again. It rang once, twice. Then, "Elliot?" a voice answered, slightly muffled. "Why are you calling this early? Everything all right?" Relief hit me so fast it almost made my knees weak. "Imogen," I said, my voice coming out rougher than I meant it to. "I need you to come up here." There was a pause. "What?" "I know how that sounds," I said quickly. "I do, but I'm serious. Something's not right with this place, with the house." "Elliot," she cut in, a faint laugh in her voice. "You've been there less than a day. Don't tell me you're already convinced it's haunted." "I'm not joking," I snapped. That stopped her. Silence on the line for a second. "What happened?" she asked, quieter now. I glanced back down the road, half expecting to see number 9 watching me even from this distance. "I'll explain when you get here," I said. "Just can you? Today, please." Another pause. Longer this time. Then, "You sound serious," she said. "Like actually serious." "I am." "All right," she sighed. "All right, I'll come up. It's what, an hour and a half? 2 if traffic's bad?" "Fine," I said quickly. "That's fine. Just text me when you're close. If my signal's gone again, just come straight to the house." "Right," she said. "And Elliot?" "Yeah?" "If this turns out to be you winding me up." "It won't," I said, and for once I meant it. By the time Imogen arrived, the light had shifted again. That dull afternoon gray had settled over everything, flattening the color out of the street, making it look even more lifeless than before. I'd spent the last couple of hours drifting around the village, never straying too far, but not willing to go back inside the house either. Not alone. I saw her car before she saw me. Small, dark blue, pulling up just past number 9. The engine cut, and a second later she stepped out, pulling her coat tighter around her against the cold. She looked exactly like she always did. Confident, slightly amused, like the world was something she had a handle on. It made me feel worse, because I knew in about 5 minutes that expression was going to change. "All right," she called, spotting me across the road. I crossed over quickly. "You actually came," I said. "Of course I did," she replied, raising an eyebrow. "You sounded like you'd seen a ghost." I didn't laugh. That was the first thing she noticed. "Okay," she said slowly. "Maybe don't tell me that was an accurate choice of words." "It wasn't," I said, a beat. "Not exactly." She studied me for a moment, and her expression shifting slightly. "You look terrible," she said. "Yeah," I muttered. "Not had much sleep." "No kidding." She glanced past me, towards the house. "That it?" I followed her gaze. Number 9 stood exactly as it had before, still, quiet, empty looking. "Yeah," I said. "That's it." She tilted her head slightly. "Doesn't look like much." "It didn't," I agreed. "That's kind of the problem." She let out a small breath, then rubbed her hands together. "Right then, go on. What's going on?" I hesitated. Where do you even start with something like that? "I heard things," I said finally. "Upstairs, in the attic, but there's no proper attic. There's something else up there." She nodded slowly. "Right, and it talks." She blinked. "Okay." "It uses voices," I added. "People I know." Elliot," she said gently, cutting in. "Are you sure you're not just I saw it, I said. That stopped her. Properly stopped her. In the reflection, I went on, my voice tightening slightly, right on the television. It wasn't behind me when I turned around, but it was there on the screen, watching me. She held my gaze for a long moment. Then, all right, she said. Not dismissive, not mocking, just careful. Let's go inside. Walking back into that house with someone else beside me felt different. Not better, but different. Like I wasn't the only one holding the weight of it anymore. The hallway was the same, still, cold. The air felt heavier again the second we stepped in, like it had been weighted. Imogen paused just inside the doorway, her eyes scanning the space. Smells odd, she said. Yeah, like old smoke or something. I swallowed. Something like that. She stepped further in, kicking the door shut behind her, and for a moment I felt that same flicker of panic, but it didn't take hold the way it had before. Not yet. Right, she said, brushing her hands together. Show me. I led her through the sitting room first. Nothing happened in here just now, I said. But this is where I saw it last night, on the screen. She glanced at the television, then back at me. Okay, she didn't laugh, didn't make a joke. That helped more than I expected. We moved towards the stairs. This is where it started, I said quietly. She looked up at the landing. Feels colder up there, she muttered. I nodded. Yeah. We climbed the stairs together, the creaks louder now with both of us moving. At the top, she stopped. You weren't kidding, she said under her breath. The landing light flickered slightly. Not enough to go out, just enough to be noticeable. I followed her gaze, to the hatch, still closed, still flush, exactly like before. That's it, I said. She stepped closer to it, tilting her head. You opened it? Yeah. And? There's a passage, I said. Behind a wall. Something's. A sound cut me off. Not from above, from the hallway behind us, a faint creak. We both turned, the bathroom door at the bar. It had been closed when we came up. Now, it was open. Just a fraction. Imogen frowned. Did you? No. We stood there, staring at it. The darkness inside looked thicker than it should have been. Not just the absence of light, something else. Right, she said, her voice a little tighter now. That's probably just, hello? The word came from inside the bathroom. Soft, neutral, not quite a whisper. Imogen went completely still. Did you hear that? She asked. I nodded slowly. Yeah. We looked at each other, then back at the door. Hello? The voice said again. Different this time. Closer. More shaped. Imogen took a step back. That's not, she started. That's not you, right? You're not? No. The voice shifted. Changed, not completely, but enough. Imogen? Her breath caught. Who just said that? I felt my stomach drop because I recognized that tone. That exact inflection. It wasn't my voice. It was hers from earlier. From when she'd spoken outside, it had copied her. Imogen's eyes widened slightly. No, she said, shaking her head. No, that's not funny. Elliot, if you're... I'm not, I said quickly. The bathroom door creaked open a little wider. The darkness inside seemed to stretch. Imogen, the voice said again. Perfect now. Exactly her. No delay. No distortion. Just her own voice coming from somewhere it shouldn't. She grabbed my arm. Tell me you're hearing that. I am. She stared at the doorway, her grip tightening slightly. That's, she whispered. That's not possible. No. We stood there for a second longer. Then the landing light flickered, once, twice, and in that brief dimming, I saw it. Not in the mirror, not in the reflection, but in the doorway, just for a second. A shape, tall, bent slightly to fit the frame, watching. The light steadied, gone. Imogen inhaled sharply. You saw that, didn't you? She said. I nodded, slowly. Yeah. She didn't say anything for a moment. Then very quietly, all right, she said, not dismissive, not skeptical, something else, something colder, I believe you. And somehow, that made everything worse. The moment she said it, I believe you, the house changed. Not in a dramatic way, not like something slammed or shattered or jumped out at us. It was quieter, subtler, but heavier, like the air had thickened around us. Imogen didn't let go of my arm straight away. Her grip stayed tight, her eyes still fixed on the bathroom doorway, like she expected something to step out at any second. Right, she said after a few seconds, her voice controlled but not steady. Right, okay, so we're not imagining this. No, I said, and that thing, whatever it is, it can copy voices. Yeah, she nodded slowly. Brilliant. There was a pause. Neither of us moved. Neither of us wanted to be the first to turn our back on that doorway. Okay, she said finally, forcing herself to let go of my arm. We need to think properly because standing here isn't. The light went out, completely, No flicker, no warning, just dark. Imogen sucked in a sharp breath beside me. Elliot. I've got it, I said quickly, fumbling with the torch in my hand. My fingers felt clumsy again, slower than they should have been. I clicked it on. Nothing. Come on. I smacked the side of it. Still nothing. And then a sound from the stairs. A soft, dragging noise, like something being pulled slowly upward. We both turned instinctively, staring down into the darkness where the staircase dropped away. I can't see anything, Imogen whispered. Neither can I. The house was completely silent apart from that sound. Drag, pause, drag, pause. Getting closer. Imogen reached out blindly and grabbed my sleeve. What is that? I don't know, I said, my voice lower now, tighter. The torch flickered. Once, then came on. The beam cut through the darkness just enough to illuminate the top of the stairs. Nothing there. The carpet, the banister, empty space. The dragging sound stopped. Just like that. Silence. We stood there, both breathing too fast, both waiting for something to move again. Okay, Imogen said, forcing the words out. Okay, we go downstairs. We don't stay up here. I nodded. Yeah, that's... A tap interrupted me, soft, close. We both looked at the wall, right beside us. Another tap, then another. Not random, deliberate. Imogen frowned slightly. That's inside the wall, she whispered. I felt my chest tighten, because I recognized it. That's how it started last night, I said. It was tap, tap, tap. The rhythm changed, sound more deliberate now, slower. Imogen tilted her head slightly, her expression shifting. That's not random, she said quietly. No. Tap, pause, tap, pause, tap. What is that? I swallowed. I don't know, but I did, at least partly, because I'd heard something like it before. Not here, not like this, but enough to recognize what it might be. It's repeating something, I said slowly. Imogen's eyes flicked to mine. Like what? Before I could answer, the tapping moved, not along the wall, through it, from one side to the other, like something traveling inside the structure of the house itself. Tap, tap, pause, tap, tap, tap. It reached the wall near the bathroom, stopped, then a new pattern, different this time, shorter, more abrupt. Imogen's brow furrowed. That sounds like letters, she said. I stared at her. What? Like code, she went on, her voice tightening. Short taps, long pauses. I've seen something like that before. It's tap, pause, tap, tap, pause, tap. She went quiet, her face paled slightly. What? I asked. She didn't answer straight away. Instead, she listened, carefully, counting under her breath. Then, no, she whispered. What? That's not... She shook her head slightly. That's not random at all. My stomach dropped. What is it? She swallowed. It's initials, she said. A cold wave ran through me. What? 3 taps, she said slowly. Pause. 1 tap, pause, 2 taps. She looked at me. 3, 1, 2. I stared at her. That doesn't... What does that mean? She shook her head. I don't know yet, but it's repeating it, as if to prove her point. Tap, 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 pause, tap, pause, tap, tap. The sound echoed through the wall again, louder this time, closer. What the hell is it trying to do? I muttered. Imogen didn't answer. She was still listening, still counting. Then, wait, she said. What? I saw something downstairs, she said slowly. When we came in, on the wall in the hallway, a picture frame. I frowned. What about it? There were names on it, she said. Old ones, dates. It looked like a memorial or something. My chest tightened. The people who died, I said. She nodded slightly. Yeah. Another tap. Closer now, right beside us. 312, she whispered. I felt my stomach drop completely. Go, I said suddenly. Downstairs. Now. We moved, quickly, not running, but close enough. The torch beam shook slightly as we went, the light catching on the walls, the stairs, the corners where shadows seemed just a little too thick. Behind us, the tapping followed. Not on the floor, not behind us in the hallway. Inside the walls, moving with us. Tap, 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 pause, tap, 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 tap. We reached the bottom of the stairs and I swung the torch towards the hallway wall. The frame was there, old wooden, slightly crooked. Imogen stepped closer to it. Here, she said, her voice tight. Look, I moved beside her, the light settling on the glass. A list of names. Faded, yellowed paper behind it. 5 entries. I read them quickly, then again slower, and my chest tightened with each one. The initials, each name had them beside it. Small, almost overlooked. 3, 1, 2, the same pattern. Those are the people who died, Imogen said quietly. I nodded slowly. Yeah. Another tap, right behind us. We both turned, the wall, silent now. Still, but I could feel it right there, listening. Why is it doing that? I whispered. Imogen didn't answer. Her eyes were still on the names. Then, it's not random, she said slowly. I know. No, she said, shaking her head slightly. I mean, it's not just repeating them. I frowned. What do you mean? She looked at me, and for the first time since she'd arrived, I saw real fear in her face. It's picking one. A cold chill ran through me. What? It's going through them, she said. One by one. Another tap. Different now. A new pattern. Not 312. Something else. She counted again. 4, she whispered. My stomach dropped. There are 5 names, I said. She nodded. Yeah. Silence settled again. Heavy. Oppressive. We stood there, staring at that frame, at those names, at those initials, waiting. And then, very softly, from somewhere just behind the wall, a voice. Not mine, not hers, not anyone we recognized. Found you. Imogen grabbed my arm again. We need to leave, she said. Yeah, now. I nodded. We turned towards the front door and stopped, because it wasn't where it should have been. The hallway stretched further than it had before, longer, narrower. The door at the end, too far away. I blinked. That's not right, I whispered. No, Imogen said, her grip tightening. No, that's definitely not right. The walls seemed to press in slightly, not moving, but closer. The light from the torch didn't reach as far as it should have. The door, still there, but wrong, like it had been pushed further away from us. Behind us, tap, tap, tap. A new pattern, faster, closer. Imogen's voice dropped to a whisper. It's not just following us anymore. I swallowed. What do you mean? She didn't look at me. She was staring straight ahead, at the door, at the space, she said. And in that moment, as the hallway seemed to stretch just a little further, I realized something that made everything worse. We weren't just trapped in the house itself was starting to move around us. For a few seconds, neither of us moved. We just stood there, staring at the hallway, both trying to make sense of something that didn't make sense at all. The door was still there, same shape, same frame, but it felt further away, like the space between us and it had been stretched out, pulled thin. This isn't real, I said, but it came out weak. Imogen didn't answer straight away. She took a slow step forward instead. The floor creaked under her foot. The hallway didn't change. She looked back at me. It's real enough, she said quietly. Behind us, tap, 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 faster now. Not measured like before, urgent, closer. We can't stay here, she added. Yeah, I said quickly. Yeah, I know. I forced myself to move, stepping beside her, keeping the torch pointed straight ahead. The beam barely reached halfway down the hall now, swallowed up by the dark like it didn't want to go any further. We walked, slowly at first, then faster, but the door didn't seem to get any closer. The space stayed the same, like we were walking in place. This is wrong, I muttered. This is completely wrong. Don't stop, Imogen said sharply. Just keep going. We did, step after step. The tapping behind us sped up, the sound traveling through the walls, matching our pace, almost keeping time with us. Tap, 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 pause, closer. Elliot, Imogen started. I know, I said, but I didn't, not really, because then the hallway snapped back, just like that. 1 second it was stretched, wrong, endless. We were right in front of the door. I nearly stumbled into it. What the? Open it, Imogen snapped. I grabbed the handle and yanked. It didn't move. My chest tightened. No, try it again. I pulled harder. Nothing. The handle didn't even turn. It was like it had been welded in place. Behind us, the tapping stopped. Dead. Silence dropped into the hallway. Heavy, waiting. Don't turn around, Imogen said quietly. I hadn't realized I was about to. What? Just don't, she said. Whatever it is, just stay focused on the door. My grip tightened. Fine. But I could feel it, that shift again, not in the walls, not in the space, in the air, like something had just entered the room, right behind us. Elliot, she said. Her voice had changed. Not much, but enough. My stomach dropped. That's not funny, I said quickly. Imogen, seriously, don't. I'm right here. I froze, because her voice had come from behind me, not beside me. Slowly, I turned my head, just enough to glance sideways. Imogen was still next to me, exactly where she should be, staring straight ahead. Not speaking. My breath caught. Then who? Elliot. The voice came again, from behind. Clear. Perfect, Imogen's voice, but she hadn't moved, hadn't opened her mouth. Don't, she whispered beside me. Don't look. Too late, I turned, and for the first time, I saw it properly, not in reflection, not in shadow, not half hidden or flickering. It was there, standing in the hallway behind us, tall, too tall. its head almost brushing the ceiling, bent slightly at an unnatural angle to fit the space. Its body looked wrong, like something stretched too far, too thin, the edges of it shifting slightly as if it wasn't fully solid. And its face, there wasn't one. Not properly, just a hollow where it should have been, a deeper darkness inside the dark. Its arms hung at its sides, long and narrow, the fingers extending just a little too far, like they hadn't quite been shaped correctly. And it wasn't moving. It didn't need to, because it was already close. Closer than it had ever been before. My body locked up, every instinct screaming at me to run, to do something, anything, but I couldn't move. Elliot, it said. My name. In Imogen's voice, but layered, like before. Two versions at once, slightly out of sync. It tilted its head, slowly, like it was studying me. Imogen grabbed my arm. Don't engage, she whispered. Don't say anything. I nodded slightly, or at least I tried to. The thing took a step forward, not a normal step. It didn't shift its weight properly, didn't move like a person. It just advanced. Closer, without the space between us changing the way it should have. My chest tightened. Stay still, Imogen said, but her voice was shaking now. For the first time, the thing lifted its arm, slowly, deliberately. Its hand came up and stopped, palm facing us, fingers slightly curled, like it was pressing against something invisible. And then I heard it, a faint sound. Glass, cracking lightly, because there wasn't any glass between us, nothing physical, nothing visible. But I could hear it, a thin, sharp fracture spreading from where its hand was. The air itself seemed to ripple slightly, like something was being pushed through. It's, Imogen whispered, it's trying to. The crack spread, a thin line appearing in the space between us and it. Not visible, not fully, but wrong enough that my eyes couldn't focus on it properly, like a reflection where there shouldn't be one. The thing pushed harder, its fingers flexing, and suddenly, for a split second, I saw something else. Not the hallway, not us. Another space, behind that crack, dark, narrow. The same passage, the same wall, and something moving inside it, trying to come through. Elliot, Imogen snapped. The sound broke whatever hold I was under. I staggered back, pulling away from the thing, my breath coming in sharp bursts. No, I said, shaking my head. No, no, no. The crack snapped shut, instantly. The sound of glass breaking echoing in my ears, then nothing. The hallway was normal again. No fracture, no distortion, just the thing. Standing there, watching, it lowered its hand, slowly. Then it smiled, or at least something in that hollow shifted, in a way that felt like a smile. And that was worse than anything else, because it wasn't just copying anymore. It understood. Imogen's grip tightened on my arm. We're not staying, she said, her voice low and urgent. We are not staying in this house another second. I nodded, slowly, because I finally understood something I hadn't before. This wasn't just a presence. It wasn't just a voice. It wasn't just something hiding in the walls. It was trying to come through. And if we stayed, if we gave it one more chance, it wouldn't need to copy anyone anymore. It would already be here, with us. For a second, we just stood there. Not because we didn't want to move, but because neither of us trusted what would happen if we did. The thing hadn't come any closer after that. It hadn't reached again. It just stood there in the hallway, slightly bent under the ceiling, watching us with that hollow space where its face should have been, waiting, like it knew we'd make the next move. We go now, Imogen said quietly. No talking, no stopping, just out the door. I nodded, slowly, carefully, like sudden movement might trigger something. On 3, she added. I swallowed. Yeah. She tightened her grip slightly. 1. The thing didn't move. 2. The hallway felt tighter, closer. 3. We ran, not gracefully, not controlled, just instinct, straight for the door. I grabbed the handle again, and this time it turned. I didn't question it, didn't hesitate. I yanked the door open, and we stumbled out into the cold air, both of us nearly slipping on the wet stone step. The moment we crossed the threshold, the pressure dropped, not completely, but enough that I could breathe again. Imogen bent forward slightly, hands on her knees, pulling in air. Okay, she said, breathless. Okay, that's behind us. The door closed on its own. We both froze, slowly turned. Number 9 stood there, still, silent, exactly as it had before, like nothing had happened. Imogen straightened slowly. We're not going back in, she said. No, I agreed immediately. Not unless we absolutely have to. I nodded. Agreed. There was a pause. We both looked at the house, then at each other. And in that moment, we both realized the same thing. We didn't understand it, not even close. And whatever it wasn't finished. We need help, Imogen said. Yeah. Not guessing, not trying things, actual help. I hesitated. There's someone, I said slowly. At the post office, she knows about the place, about what was there before. Imogen frowned. Why did you say that earlier? I didn't know how much she knew, I admitted. But she showed me records about a fire, something about the people hearing knocking after the house burned. Imogen's expression darkened slightly. Right, she said. Yeah, that tracks. We didn't waste time. The bell above the post office door rang again as we stepped inside. The warmth hit us straight away, but it didn't feel as comforting this time. Not after what we'd just seen. The woman behind the counter, Martha, looked up immediately, and the moment she saw both of us, her expression changed. Not surprise, recognition. You saw it, she said. Not a question. Imogen glanced at me. We did, she said. Martha nodded once, like she'd expected that answer. Come here, she said, motioning us closer. We stepped up to the counter, both of us still slightly shaken. It's not just voices, Imogen said quickly. It's physical. It's trying to push through something, like a reflection, like a barrier, Martha finished. Imogen blinked. Yes, Martha sighed. Then it's further along than it should be. A cold weight settled in my chest. What does that mean? I asked. She looked at me, really looked. Did you open the hatch? She asked. I hesitated. Yeah. Did you go inside? No, I said quickly. Not fully. I just looked. There's a passage and a wall. And the spoons? She interrupted. My stomach tightened. Yeah. She closed her eyes briefly. Of course there are. Imogen frowned. What does that mean? Martha didn't answer straight away. Instead, she turned and reached for the folder again. Opened it. But this time, she didn't show us the same pages. She flipped further in. Older documents. Handwritten. Less official. These aren't public records, she said quietly. They're local, passed down, things people don't like to talk about openly. I leaned in slightly. What are they? She tapped the page. Ash Caller, she said. The name felt wrong, heavy, like it didn't belong in the room. Imogen's brow furrowed. What's that supposed to be? Martha met her gaze. Something that comes out of fire, she said, or stays behind after it. I felt a chill run down my spine. It mimics, she continued, voices, people, anything it thinks will get a response. It doesn't force its way in, not at first. It waits. For what? Imogen asked. Martha looked at me. For recognition. My throat tightened. A word, she added. A name, a reply. Imogen glanced at me, then back at her. And then what? Martha's voice dropped slightly. Then it starts learning. Silence settled between us. Heavy. You said it's trying to come through, Imogen said carefully. Martha nodded. Yes. How? Martha flipped another page. There was a rough sketch. Not detail, just lines, a space, a wall, a circle marked around it. Barriers, she said. Old ones. Not physical. Not exactly. More like rules. I frowned. What kind of rules? She tapped the drawing. Silence, she said. Distance, iron, salt. My mind flicked back to the attic, the spoons. Those weren't random, I said. No, she replied. They were placed there, to keep it contained. Imogen's expression shifted slightly. Contained? Yes. Wait, she said, frowning. You're saying that thing wasn't just in the house? Martha shook her head. No. A cold weight settled in my chest again. It was being held there. The words landed harder than anything else she'd said. I swallowed. By who? Martha didn't hesitate. The people who rebuilt the place, she said. Or the ones before them. Doesn't matter which. Someone knew it was there. Imogen stared at her. And they just left it? They didn't leave it, Martha said. They buried it. Silence. Heavy. Wrong. I felt my thoughts starting to shift, rearrange, because everything I'd assumed, everything I thought I understood, it wasn't right. It's not trapped, I said slowly. Martha looked at me. No. It was, I hesitated. Kept there. She nodded. Yes. Imogen exhaled sharply. That's worse, she muttered. Much worse, Martha agreed. I ran a hand through my hair, my mind racing. Then why is it active now? Why now? Martha's gaze didn't waver, because something changed. I swallowed. What? She held my eyes for a second, then said, Did you break anything? My stomach dropped, the hatch, the wall, the movement. I didn't, I started, then stopped, because I had, not physically, not exactly. But I'd opened it, looked inside, acknowledged it, spoken, multiple times. Martha saw it in my face. You gave it access, she said quietly. Imogen looked between us. What does that mean? Martha didn't soften it. It means it doesn't need the house anymore. Silence. Then, no, I said, too quickly, too instinctively. That's not no, it's still there. We saw it. It didn't leave. Martha shook her head slowly. You're misunderstanding. A cold feeling crept up my spine. It was never bound to the place, she said. It was bound by the conditions. My chest tightened. And you? She paused, just long enough for it to land. You changed those conditions. Imogen stepped back slightly. How do we fix it? Martha hesitated. Then, you restore them, she said. Salt, iron, silence. You close what was opened. I nodded quickly. Right, fine, we can do that. The spoons, they're gone, aren't they? She interrupted. I froze. What? Her eyes didn't leave mine. The spoons, she repeated. The salt, the line that kept it contained. A memory flickered in my mind. The attic, the passage, the circle. I hadn't checked closely, not properly, but something about it. Something had felt off. I don't know, I said, but even as I said it, I did. Martha nodded slightly. Then you'd better hope they're still there. Imogen shook her head. No, we're not going back up there. Not after what we just... You don't have a choice, Martha said. The words cut straight through. We both went quiet. If you don't close it, she continued, it won't stay contained. I swallowed. It already isn't, I said. Martha's expression didn't change. No, she said, it's not. And for the first time since we left the house, I realized something worse than anything we'd seen so far. We hadn't escaped it. We hadn't even slowed it down. All we'd done was interrupt it. And now, it was figuring out what to do next. We didn't speak for a while after that. Not properly. Imogen and I stepped back out into the street, the cold hitting us again. But this time it didn't feel clean or grounding like before. It felt thin, like something was missing from it, like the safety I'd felt earlier had been stripped away without me noticing. You're not seriously thinking of going back in there, she said finally, her voice low. I didn't answer straight away, because I didn't want to, because saying it out loud would make it real. If we don't, I said slowly, it's not going to stop. That doesn't mean we walk back into it, she snapped. We just saw what it can do. It's not just a voice, Elliot. It's not just whatever that thing is trying to get through something. I know. No, I don't think you do, she said, turning to face me fully. That thing looked at us. It understood we were there. It reacted. I know, I repeated, sharper this time. Silence. She held my gaze for a second, then looked away. You're thinking about the passage, she said. I nodded. That's where it is, or where it started. And you think going back up there is going to fix it? I think not going back is worse. She exhaled slowly, rubbing her hands together. This is insane. Yeah, I said, it is. Another pause. Then, fine, she muttered. But we don't go up there blind. We do it properly. We follow what she said. Salt, iron, whatever else. I nodded quickly. Yeah. We go in, we fix whatever's broken, and we get out. Agreed. And if anything starts going wrong, we leave immediately. I hesitated, then nodded again. Yeah. She looked at me, narrowing her eyes slightly. You hesitated. I didn't. You did. I stopped. I just don't think it's going to be that simple. She didn't argue, because we both knew it wouldn't be. We gathered what we could, salt from the post office. A handful of old iron nails Martha insisted we take, though she didn't explain why those specifically. And one last thing. Don't speak unless you have to, she said, pressing the small packet of salt into my hand. Not to it. Not near it. Silence matters, I nodded. Right. And Elliot. I looked at her. If it uses someone you know, she hesitated slightly, choosing her words. Don't respond. Not even by accident. My throat tightened. Yeah, I said quietly. I've already made that mistake. Her expression softened for just a second, then hardened again. Then don't make it twice. Walking back to number 9 felt different this time. Heavier. Like the house wasn't just waiting, it was expecting us. The door stood exactly as we'd left it. Closed. Still. Ordinary. I stopped just short of it, my hand hovering near the handle. Ready? Imogen asked. I nodded. Yeah. I opened the door. The air inside felt colder than before. Not just temperature. Something else. Something that settled in your chest the moment you stepped in. We didn't speak. Didn't need to. We moved through the hallway quickly, straight for the stairs, the torch cutting a narrow beam through the dim light. Everything looked the same. Too same. Like nothing had happened. But I could feel it. Watching. Listening. We reached the landing. The hatch, still closed, still waiting. Imogen handed me the nails. You open it, she whispered. I nodded. Reached up, grabbed the ring, pulled. The hatch opened easier this time. Too easy. The smell hit us again, stronger, burnt, stale. I raised the torch, shone it into the space. The passage was still there, the wall, the dark, but something had changed. The spoons were gone, every single one. The beam where they'd been nailed was bare. The wood splintered slightly where they'd been pulled free. My stomach dropped. "They're not," Imogen whispered. "I know." A cold silence settled between us, because that wasn't damage, that wasn't decay. Something had removed them, from the inside. Imogen swallowed. "That's bad, isn't it?" "Yeah." I pulled myself up slightly, enough to get a better look inside. The passage looked darker now, deeper, like it had stretched. The wall at the end, still there, still wrong. But the surface, it wasn't just dark anymore, it looked thinner, like something was pressing against it from behind, trying to come through. Imogen's voice came from below me. "Elliot, yeah, don't go too far in." "I'm not." But I leaned a little further anyway, just enough to see, and then something shifted. Not behind the wall, closer, inside the passage. The torch flickered, once, twice, and in that brief, unstable light, I saw it. Not fully, not clearly, but a shape, folded into the space, watching. I dropped back down immediately, my breath catching. "It's there," I said. Imogen stepped back instinctively. "What?" "It's not just behind the wall anymore," I said, my voice tight. "It's in the passage." Silence. Then, "Okay," she said slowly. "Okay, so we don't go in. We do what she said from here." I nodded quickly. "Yeah." We moved fast, salt first. Imogen poured a line along the edge of the hatch opening, her hands steady despite everything. I handed her the nails. She hesitated. "Where do these go?" I glanced up, at the beam, at where the spoons had been. "There," I said. She nodded. Carefully, she reached up, pressing one of the nails into the wood. The moment it touched, a sound came from inside the passage. Sharp, sudden, like something reacting. We both froze. Then a voice from above, not echoing, not distant, right there. "Elliot." My chest tightened instantly. "No," I whispered. "No, why are you doing this?" My hands clenched. That voice, it wasn't my aunt, it wasn't my mom, it wasn't my brother, it was mine. Perfect, exact, every tone, every inflection. I felt something twist in my chest. "No," I said, louder now. "No, that's not." "Stop talking," Imogen snapped. I shut my mouth immediately. The voice continued. "You're making it worse." It sounded calm, reasonable, like it was trying to help. "Just leave it," it said. "It's fine. It's already done. You don't need to." I shook my head hard, stepping back. "No." The words slipped out before I could stop it. Imogen shot me a look. "Elliot," but it was too late. The voice changed instantly. "There it is." My stomach dropped. The wall inside the passage shifted, not cracked, not broken. Shifted, like something behind it had moved closer. The surface bulged slightly, then still. "You're easier than the others," the voice said. My voice, but not me. Imogen grabbed my arm. "Don't respond," she whispered. "Just let me finish." She pressed the nail into the beam harder. The wood creaked. Another sound came from inside the passage, louder this time. Angrier, a low, dragging noise. I stared up at the opening, my heart racing. And that's when something else hit me. Not fear, not panic. Something worse. A memory, sudden, sharp, uninvited. I blinked, confused, because it didn't feel like something I'd remembered. It felt like something being placed, like a thought that didn't belong to me. I was standing in the passage, not now, before, looking at the wall, touching it, hearing something on the other side. "You've been here longer than you think." The voice slipped into my thoughts, not just my ears, inside. I staggered slightly. "No," I whispered. That didn't happen, but it felt real, too real. I could see it, feel it, like it was my memory. Imogen's voice cut through. "Elliot, look at me." I forced my eyes down to hers. "That's not yours," she said firmly. "Do you hear me? That's not your memory." I nodded slowly. "Yeah." But even as I said it, I wasn't sure anymore, because the more I tried to push it away, the clearer it became. And that was the moment I realized something that made everything worse. It wasn't just copying voices anymore. It was learning how I thought, how I remembered, and it was starting to rewrite it. "Keep going," Imogen said, her voice sharper now. "Don't let it pull you into that." I nodded, though my focus was slipping. That memory, if it was even a memory, was still there, hovering just behind everything else. The feeling of standing in that passage, of knowing it, not discovering it, not being surprised by it, knowing it, like I'd been there before, like I'd belonged there. "No," I muttered under my breath. That's not real, isn't it? The voice didn't come from above this time. It came from everywhere, inside the walls, inside the floor, inside my head. Imogen grabbed my shoulder and shook me slightly. Elliot, stay with me. I blinked hard. Yeah, I'm... The wall inside the passage shifted again, more this time. The surface bulged outward slightly, like something pressing against it from the other side, not breaking through, testing it. Imogen shoved another nail into the beam. The wood groaned. The sound from inside the passage turned into something lower. Not quite a growl, not quite anything human, a sound of resistance. You feel that? She said. I nodded. Yeah, it doesn't like this. No, that much was obvious, but something else was becoming clear too. This isn't enough, I said. Imogen glanced at me. What? The spoons, I said. The circle. There was more than just the nails. She frowned. What are you saying? I looked up into the passage again. At the beam, at the empty space where the spoons had been. That wasn't just decoration, I said. It was part of it. Whatever they did, it wasn't just to block it. It was to hold it in place. Imogen's expression shifted. So what? We're missing pieces? Yes. And where are those pieces now? I didn't answer, because I already knew. Inside. Somewhere in the house. Or with it. A cold silence settled between us. Right, she said slowly. So we're trying to fix something that's already been broken from the inside. Yeah, brilliant. She pressed another nail into the beam, harder this time, her jaw set. We finish this part first, she said. Then we figure out the rest. I nodded, but my attention kept drifting. Back to that memory, that feeling, that place. You remember it now. I flinched. No, you stood here before. That's not true. You spoke, my breath caught. You gave it a name. No, I said, louder this time. No, I didn't. I never. Elliot. Imogen's voice cut through. I looked at her. She was watching me carefully now, concern and something else. What did it just say? She asked. I hesitated. Then that I've been here before. Her expression didn't change immediately, which made it worse. And, she pressed, I swallowed. That I gave it a name. Silence. Heavy. Imogen looked back up at the passage, then at me. Did you? No, I said immediately. No, I didn't. I've never even... But the words didn't feel as solid as they should have. That memory again, stronger now. Clearer, standing in the passage, touching the wall, hearing something on the other side. Call me. I staggered back slightly. That's not real, I whispered. That's not. It doesn't need to be real, Imogen said sharply. It just needs you to believe it. I looked at her. But it feels... I know, she said. That's the point. Another shift in the wall. Louder this time. The surface pushing outward further than before. A faint cracking sound. Not breaking. Not yet, but close. We don't have time for this, she said. Focus. I nodded, forced myself to look away from the passage, from the wall, from whatever was trying to come through it. Okay. But the thought wouldn't leave, because if what it was saying was even partially true, if someone had named it, then that meant, this isn't random, I said suddenly. Imogen glanced at me. What? The fire, I said. The house before this one. The people who died. Yeah? They weren't just hiding, I said. They were reacting to something that was already there. Her expression shifted slightly. Go on. I stepped back from the hatch, my mind racing now, pieces starting to connect in ways I didn't like. The father, I said. The one who survived. What if he didn't just get lucky? Imogen frowned. What are you saying? I'm saying, what if he started it, I said. The words felt wrong even as I said them. But they made sense. Too much sense. Imogen stared at me. Started what? I swallowed. Whatever this is. Silence. Then, a ritual? She said. Maybe, I said. Something to call it, to use it, to control it. Another sound from the passage, sharper now, more violent. Imogen glanced up. That didn't go well. No, I let out a shaky breath. What if the fire wasn't an accident? I added. Her eyes flicked back to mine. You think he what? Burned the house down? I think something went wrong, I said. Something he couldn't control anymore. The memory hit again, stronger. This time, not just me, a man, standing in that same space, older, desperate, holding something in his hand, speaking, just once. My head throbbed. I grabbed the edge of the wall to steady myself. Elliot, I'm fine, I said quickly. But I wasn't, because now I wasn't just remembering, I was seeing it. The father, Silas, standing in that passage, not hiding from it, facing it, calling it, and behind him, children, pressed into the corner, terrified. Don't, stay back. Dad. The voices overlapped, echoing, distorted. You left them. The voice shifted again, deeper, older, accusing. I shook my head hard. Those aren't my memories. No, Imogen said firmly. They're not. Don't let it. It's not just copying, I said suddenly. She stopped. What? It's showing me, I said. What happened? Her expression darkened. Or what it wants you to think happened. I hesitated, because I didn't know which was worse. Another crack. Louder. The wall bulged further, the surface thinning. Either way, I said, my voice tightening, this didn't start with us. No, she agreed. It started there. I looked up at the passage, at the wall, at the thing behind it, and for the first time, I understood what we'd gotten wrong. It's not trying to escape, I said. Imogen frowned. What do you mean? I swallowed. It already did. Silence. Then what? The house, I said. The fire, the rebuild, all of it. None of that was about trapping it. My chest tightened. It was about containing what was left. Imogen stared at me. And the rest? I looked at her, really looked, and felt something cold settle in my chest. The rest didn't stay behind. A long pause. Then, you mean it's already? Yes. Another crack. The wall shifted again, more violently this time. The surface stretching thin enough now that I could almost see through it, a shape behind it, pressing closer. Then what are we dealing with? Imogen asked. My voice came out quieter than I meant it to. Not something trapped in a house. I glanced up at the passage, at the thing trying to come through, and then at her. At least not anymore. Because now it wasn't just about where it had come from. It was about where it had already reached, and how much of it was already here. We don't have time to figure the whole thing out, Imogen said, her voice tight now, controlled but cracking at the edges. We just stop it from getting through. That's it. That's all we focus on. I nodded, even though my thoughts were still slipping in and out of things that didn't belong to me. Yeah. The wall in the passage shifted again, harder. A deep, hollow sound rippled through the wood and brick above us, like something striking from the other side. Not testing anymore, pushing. The surface bowed outward, just enough that the torchlight caught something behind it. Movement, slow, deliberate. Elliot, Imogen whispered, look at it. I am. No, properly. I forced myself to focus, not on the shape, not on the movement, on the wall itself, on the barrier, on what was breaking. And I saw it then, faint lines, hairline fractures spreading out from the center. Not cracks from force, cracks from pressure, from something that didn't belong pressing into a space that wasn't meant to hold it. We're running out of time, she said. I nodded. We need to finish the line, I said. Close the opening, reset it. And if that doesn't work? I didn't answer because I didn't have one. She exhaled sharply. Right, fine. She grabbed the rest of the salt and began pouring it more deliberately now, sealing the edges of the hatch, making a thicker line. I took the remaining nails and drove them into the beam as hard as I could, the wood splintering slightly under the pressure. Each impact echoed up into the passage. Each one, a reaction, a low rising sound from the other side. Not quite a scream, not quite anything human, but getting louder, angrier. You hear that? Imogen said. Yeah, it's reacting. It doesn't like it. Good. But there was something else, something beneath it, a rhythm. Not the tapping from before, something slower, heavier, like a heartbeat. I froze. Do you hear that? I asked. She paused, listened. Yeah, she whispered. The wall shifted again. This time a small section gave way. Not fully, not broken, but enough. Enough that a thin line opened, a slit just wide enough to see through. The torchlight flickered, and for a second I saw it clearly. Not just a shape, not just movement. A form, pressed against the other side, too large for the space, folding into itself. Its surface looked wrong. Not solid, not fluid. Something in between, like burnt material still shifting. And its face, if it had one, was pressed right up against that opening, watching. My breath caught. Don't look at it, Imogen said sharply. Too late, because it saw me, not just looking, recognizing. And in that moment, everything changed. The sound from the other side stopped, instantly. Silence, the kind that makes your ears ring, the kind that means something has noticed you properly. Elliot. The voice came from everywhere at once. Not just one, not just two, multiple, layered, my aunt, my brother, my own voice, all speaking at once, out of sync. You see me now? I staggered slightly. No, don't answer, Imogen snapped. I clenched my jaw shut. The slit in the wall widened slightly, just a fraction, enough for something to push through. A hand, long, pale, too thin. The fingers curled around the edge of the opening, pressing against the boundary like it was testing how much resistance remained. Imogen stepped back. Elliot, I know, but I didn't move, because I couldn't, because something in me, something deep, was reacting to it. Not fear, not exactly, recognition. And that was worse. You remember now. The voices overlapped again. You stood here, you spoke to me, you gave me a name. I shook my head hard. No. But the memory, it came back again, clearer than ever. The man, Silas, standing in that passage, desperate, holding something in his hand, a coin, no, a marker, a token, something used in games. His voice, just tell me what you want. The thing behind the wall, answering, not in words, in something else. And then a name, not spoken, felt, given. And the moment it was, the barrier changed, weakened, opened. You helped him, I gasped. That's not, you were there. The memory twisted, shifted, and suddenly, it wasn't just him anymore. It was me, standing in that same place, looking at the wall, hearing it, answering. No, I said louder now. That didn't happen. That's not. Elliot! Imogen grabbed me, pulling me back sharply. Look at me. I blinked. The passage snapped back into focus. The wall, the slit, the hand, still there, still pushing. That's not your memory, she said firmly. It's trying to anchor you to it. Don't let it. I nodded. Barely. Yeah, but the feeling didn't leave, because something inside me still wasn't sure. The hand pushed further through, the wrist now visible, the surface of it flickering slightly like it wasn't fully stable. The wall groaned. Another crack. Louder. Imogen grabbed the last of the nails. Hold it back, she said. How? I don't know. Just don't let it pull through. I stepped forward instinctively, my heart racing. The hand shifted, turned, reaching, not grabbing, not attacking, inviting. Come closer. My breath hitched. No. You don't have to be afraid. The voice softened, more controlled now, less chaotic, more focused. You already belong here. I shook my head. No, I don't. You've been here before. No. You answered. The hand moved closer. The air around it distorted slightly, like the boundary was thinning further. I clenched my fists. You're not real, I said. Then why are you still here? The words hit harder than anything else, because I didn't have an answer. Imogen slammed another nail into the beam. The structure shuddered. The hand recoiled slightly. A sound from the other side, sharp, painful. Again, she said. I grabbed another nail and drove it in, hard. The wall shifted violently, the slit narrowing slightly, the hand pulling back further, the sound rising, angrier now, more desperate. It's working, she said. Keep going. We worked fast, desperate. Each nail, each movement, each second, the barrier seemed to push back, slowly, the slit shrinking, the hand retreating, but not gone, not yet. You can't close it. The voice sharpened, less controlled. It's already open. Another crack. The wall bulged again, stronger this time, fighting back. It's pushing through. Imogen shouted, I see it. The shape behind the wall pressed harder, the structure bending under the pressure, the nails creaking, the wood straining. Elliot, I know! I grabbed the last handful of salt and threw it across the opening, sealing what remained of the line. The moment it hit, the entire passage reacted. A sharp, violent sound tore through the space, not a scream, something deeper, older. The wall snapped back slightly, the slit closing further. The hand, gone. Silence, complete. I staggered back, breathing hard. Imogen leaned against the wall, her chest rising and falling quickly. Did that? I don't know, I said. The hatch above us creaked. The beam settled. The air shifted. Not gone, but different, like something had been forced back. Not defeated, just pushed away. For now. We stood there in silence for a long moment, waiting, listening. Nothing moved, nothing spoke, nothing pressed against the wall. Imogen let out a slow breath. We did something, she said, yeah. Did we stop it? I looked up at the hatch, at the passage, at the place where it had been, and something in my chest tightened. No, I said quietly. Then what did we do? I swallowed. We shut a door. Silence, heavy. And if it opens again? She asked. I didn't answer straight away, because I already knew, and I think she did too. Then next time, I said finally, it won't need to ask. We didn't stay after that. Not to check, not to make sure, not to convince ourselves it was over. We closed the hatch properly, sealed what we could, and left the house without speaking. The door shut behind us with that same quiet click, and this time neither of us turned back. For a while, it felt like enough. The air outside was cold again, real. The street looked the same as it always had, empty, extraordinary in a way that almost made the last few hours feel distant, like something we'd imagined together, but neither of us said that out loud because we both knew it wasn't true. Imogen drove. I didn't offer, didn't argue. I just got into the passenger seat and stared straight ahead as we pulled away from Blackmere Row, the houses shrinking behind us, the narrow road opening out into something wider, something more familiar. For the first 10 minutes, neither of us spoke. Then, "You're coming back with me," she said. It wasn't a question. I nodded. "Yeah." "Good." Another pause. "We're not going to pretend that's finished," she added. "No, and we're not going back there." I hesitated. "Then, not yet," I said. She didn't respond, but I felt the shift in her posture. She didn't agree. She didn't argue either. And that silence said enough. That night at her flat, everything felt wrong. Not because anything happened, because nothing did. No voices, no footsteps, no tapping, no shadows and reflections, nothing, just normal. And after everything we'd been through, that felt worse. I sat on her sofa, staring at the television, watching something I couldn't even follow. My thoughts still stuck in that house, in that passage, at that wall. Imogen moved around quietly in the kitchen, making tea, trying to act like things hadn't shifted permanently. "You all right?" she asked eventually. "Yeah," I said automatically. She didn't believe me, didn't push it either. She handed me a mug and sat down across from me. "You're thinking about it," she said. "Yeah, same." We sat in silence for a while. Then, "What if that wasn't the only one?" she asked. I looked at her. "What?" "The names," she said. "On the wall. The tapping. It was cycling through them." I nodded slowly. "Yeah. So what if it's not just one thing?" she continued. "What if it's—" "I don't know," I said quickly, because I didn't want to think about that. "Not yet." She watched me for a moment, then nodded. "All right." We didn't talk about it again that night. I slept, eventually, but not well. The dreams, they weren't like normal nightmares. They weren't chaotic. They weren't random. They were structured, specific. I was back in the passage, standing in the dark, looking at the wall. But this time, it wasn't closed. It was open. And on the other side, there was something else. Not just a shape, not just movement, a space, larger than it should have been, deeper, endless, and something inside it, watching me, waiting. You came back. I woke up before it finished, heart racing, breath uneven, the room around me, still, quiet, normal. But the feeling didn't leave, because it hadn't felt like a dream. It had felt like a continuation. The next few days passed without incident, at least on the surface. No voices, no figures, no movement, nothing that couldn't be explained. But something had changed, not around me, inside. It was subtle. At first, small things, moments where I'd forget what I was doing, where a thought would slip in that didn't feel like mine, where a memory would surface that didn't belong to anything I recognized. I told myself it was stress, lack of sleep, shock, but the longer it went on, the harder it became to ignore, because it wasn't random. It was consistent, targeted, like something was still there, just quieter. About a week later, I went back to my own flat. I didn't tell Imogen, not properly. I just said I needed to get some things, that I'd be back. She didn't like it, I could tell, but she didn't stop me, probably because she knew, at some point, I was going to have to be alone again. The building was exactly as I'd left it, 3rd floor, top flat, no one above me. I'd always liked that, no noise, no neighbors overhead, no footsteps, just quiet. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. Everything looked normal, exactly where I'd left it. The air felt still, unchanged. I let out a slow breath. "See?" I muttered to myself. "You're fine, it's over. You—" A sound stopped me, soft, faint, from above. I froze. No, that wasn't. I looked up, at the ceiling, listened, nothing, silence. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. "Don't start," I whispered. I stepped further inside, closing the door behind me, trying to shake it off. "You're just on edge, that's all this is." I moved into the living room, dropped my bag on the chair and sat down heavily, running a hand over my face. For a few minutes, nothing happened, no sounds, no movement, just quiet, normal. Then a creak directly above me, my chest tightened instantly. "No," I whispered. Another sound, slow, measured, a step. I stood up, heart racing. "That's not possible," I said. "There's nothing above this flat. There's no one." Another step, clearer this time, not pipes, not settling, footsteps moving back and forth. Exactly the same as before. I backed away slowly, my eyes fixed on the ceiling. "No," I said again. No, you're not. You're not here. You're not. The television screen flickered. I turned. Slowly. The screen had gone black. Not off, just black. And in it, the reflection. I stood in the middle of the room, alone. Except I wasn't. Behind me, something moved. Tall, narrow, folding into the space, watching. I didn't turn. I couldn't, because I already knew what I'd see. The thing in the reflection tilted its head, slowly, and then, very slowly, it raised its hand. Not pointing, not reaching, just lifting to where its face should have been, like it was thinking, like it was waiting. You closed the door. The voice came softly, not layered this time, not distorted, just clear. But you didn't leave. My throat tightened. I did, I whispered. I left. I got out. You brought it with you. The words settled into the room like something heavy, final. I stared at the reflection, at the shape behind me, at the way it didn't need to hide anymore. And in that moment, I understood, not everything, not fully, but enough. It hadn't needed the house, not in the way I thought. The house had just been the beginning, the place where it learned, where it waited, where it found someone who would answer. And now it didn't need walls or passageways or hidden spaces. It just needed recognition, connection, a voice. And I'd given it all three. Elliot, I closed my eyes because I knew there was no door left to shut, no line left to draw, no place left to run. And the worst part, the part that still stays with me, is that it didn't sound angry. It didn't sound violent. It didn't even sound threatening. It sounded patient, like it knew something I didn't, like it understood how this was going to end, long before I ever realized it had begun.